Welcome back to Chrome and Classics, where we bring legendary cars back to life, one restoration at a time. Today, we're diving into a truly special project, reviving one of the most technologically advanced supercars of its era, the 1987 Porsche 959. This was a car that redefined performance and engineering in the late 80s, setting the foundation for modern supercars. But after decades of wear, this particular example has seen better days. Now it's our mission to restore it to its former glory, piece by piece. I first laid eyes on this Guards Red 1987 Porsche 959 in a storage facility, covered in a thick layer of dust, its once pristine paint dulled by time. The owner had parked it nearly 2 decades ago, after an engine issue sidelined it indefinitely. Now, it sat with flat tires, faded trim, and an interior that had seen better days. But despite the neglect, the essence of the 959 was still there, waiting to be revived. The first step was carefully transporting the car back to the workshop. With its air-cooled, twin-turbocharged flat-six engine and an advanced all-wheel drive system, the 959 was decades ahead of its time. However, that complexity also meant it wasn't an easy project. Just moving it required extra care. The hydraulic suspension had long since failed, and the once advanced electronics were now relics of the past. But once on the lift, we could fully assess the damage and start our plan for restoration. Stripping the car down was the only way to truly understand the extent of the work needed. The engine was the biggest concern. This 2.85-liter twin-turbocharged power plant was revolutionary when new, pushing 444 horsepower, insane for the late 80s. But time hadn't been kind to it. Corrosion, seized components, and aged turbo seals meant a full rebuild was necessary. We carefully disassembled the engine, cataloging each part, knowing that sourcing replacements wouldn't be easy. With the engine out, we turned our attention to the chassis. The 959 was built with a mix of aluminum and Kevlar-reinforced composite panels, making it incredibly light, but also challenging to repair. The bodywork had suffered minor dents and stress cracks, so we stripped it down to bare material, fixing imperfections before preparing it for a fresh coat of Guards Red paint, the color this 959 was born with. While the body was being prepped, we tackled the suspension. The 959's self-leveling system was cutting edge in its day, but notorious for failures. The original components were beyond saving, so we had to source a modern equivalent that preserved the car's unique handling characteristics. After weeks of research and custom fabrication, we had a working system that would keep this 959 planted while respecting its original engineering intent. The wheels were another crucial detail. The 959's hollow-spoke magnesium wheels were revolutionary, designed to cool the brakes while reducing weight. Ours had suffered corrosion and curb rash, so after careful restoration, we refinished them in their original silver, wrapping them in fresh performance tires. Seeing them back on the car was a major milestone. It was finally starting to look like a 959 again. With the chassis and exterior taking shape, we focused on the interior. The leather seats were dry and cracked, and the dashboard had suffered from years of exposure. Our goal was to keep as much of the original material as possible while restoring everything to factory spec, carefully reconditioning the leather, replacing brittle plastics, and refreshing the gauges brought the cockpit back to life. When I finally sat in the driver's seat, it felt like stepping into 1987 all over again. But the heart of this machine was still missing: the engine. After months of meticulous work, the flat six was finally rebuilt. Brand new pistons, remachined cylinder heads, and refreshed twin turbos brought it back to factory spec. Bolting everything together and fitting it back into the chassis was a nerve-wracking moment, knowing how much effort had gone into making it perfect. Then came the moment of truth, the first startup. Turning the key, the 959 cranked, coughed, and then roared to life. The unmistakable sound of its twin-turbo flat six filled the workshop, signaling that this legend had returned. It was an emotional moment, knowing that after decades of sitting idle, this engineering marvel was back in action. With the engine running, we took the 959 for a shakedown test. The first few miles were careful, monitoring temperatures, boost pressure, and suspension behavior. But once everything checked out, it was time to push it. The way the 959 accelerated, shifted, and handled was unlike anything else from its era. Even by today's standards, this car is a masterpiece. Bringing this 1987 Porsche 959 back to life was one of the most challenging yet rewarding restorations we've ever done. A car that once set the benchmark for performance had been given a second chance, ready to be enjoyed once more. If you enjoyed this build, be sure to subscribe for more legendary restorations. This is Chrome and Classics, and we'll see you in the next one.